Who the fuck do you think you are? I'm Nicole Smith, and I'm going to take a few minutes to try and explain who I think I am. My dad asked me that question a few days after my affair with my second husband. I cheated on my first, came out, and he basically meant you have no right to screw up your life and your kids' lives and your husband's life and the lives of so many other people around you. And you have an obligation to put things back together. I did not do that. I'm still over a dozen years without having spoken to my dad. Not from lack of effort on my part, but once you've outsinned somebody's love for you, it's kind of hard to go back. This is going to feel a little disjointed and a little heavy, I suppose, on the people that were in my life before my 30th year. And that's unfortunate. It's a little heavy at the front end, but it all plays into who I am. I was raised in a Christian home. I got married at 18. I very much settled into the life of domesticity. I had 3 kids by the time I was 24. I was raised with the idea that there's no point in a woman going to university, racking up school debt, only to work long enough to pay off the debt so that she could fulfill her ultimate role, which is being a stay-at-home wife and mother. So that is what my first 12 years of adulthood looked like. And I was, for the most part, feeling fulfilled. But the thing is, I intentionally married a man I wasn't in love with. My parents had kind of pressed it on me that a chemically charged, emotionally attached sort of relationship didn't have longevity, but finding a good man who could be a good provider did. And my first husband was the most decent sort. But what I needed in a relationship was missing. And I went around looking for it. I had one emotional affair after the other. I kept calling it different things. I finally had a best friend for a few years where that did eventually get physical. And then Mark walked back into my life. He was somebody I had had a crush on as young as 12, and I hadn't seen him much since I was 16. But his sister was my best friend at the time that he came back to my hometown in 2011. October 3rd, he settled back into our hometown. December 3rd, I told my first husband that I'd slept with him. By December 28th of 2011, so less than 3 months after Mark had walked back into my life, we were moving in together. My family and friends were shocked, dismayed, had felt betrayed for lots of reasons. Man alive, I was a whore about things. I used people. I hid things in plain sight. Mark said bullshit baffles brains, and I think I really did take advantage of a lot of people's naivety and just kind of flaunt my adultery. It was gross. It was definitely gross. And I'd been the person that a lot of people had turned to for so many years. It was also very hypocritical for me to say that you can put this relationship back together, but no, I'm not going to. But I wasn't ever in love with my first husband, and I finally got to the point where that actually mattered, or that I could acknowledge how much that mattered. Mark and I had a soul connection. It was, he just knew me. Where everybody else was believing the crap that I was telling, he took one look at me and said, no, not buying it. I know who you are. And he challenged me, and he loved me in a way that I'd never been loved. And so I pursued that. I pursued that so recklessly. But the problem is, I really had this version of my heavenly father who sounded a lot like my earthly father, which was basically, if you can't love your first husband, you don't love God. Or if you don't love your first husband, you can't love God. Like, it's not possible, because otherwise you'd be able to do this. But I was done willing my heart to follow my head, and it was an impossibility. And so when my family abandoned me, my dad says it's not abandonment. I did the desertion myself. When that happened, I assumed God had abandoned me also. And so once you follow an affair and everybody and everything is no longer available to you that you used to rely on, you find different outlets for the pain. I developed a serious cocaine addiction within a few months, and my alcoholism came shortly after, and then cigarette smoking and pills, and it's a long list. Weed. Years and years. The cocaine was for years. The pills were for the years after. The alcohol ran through the whole course of my relationship with Mark. We got physical. Mark used to say, first slap is free because you're a girl. So, like, if I slapped him once, I got away with it. If I slapped him twice, I was getting the third. And did I ever stop at one? Nope. I was free to express myself however I wanted to, and I went overboard with that. I think I loved fighting. I do. I think I was kind of addicted to the cycle of fighting and making up, but I think I was also just addicted to being able to have outbursts. Like, I had stifled who I was as a child, and then again in my first marriage, and it felt so freeing to be a disaster. Around 2016, Mark was diagnosed with alcohol-induced cirrhosis of the liver. We'd both known that it was a problem the whole course of our relationship. I gave Mark the freedom to decide how he wanted to handle that. His doctor gave him 6 months to 10 years. Cirrhosis is very tricky. It can also, depending on how you choose to manage it, be something that can kind of be suppressed for a while. Mark chose to not give up drinking. On September 25th, 2020, he went home to be with Jesus. I'd been his caregiver for years. It was kind of all I'd known for years. And it really was just him and I. His dad passed about 9 months before he did. And our relationship with his mom deteriorated at that time. And so it was kind of us against the world, which it had been, I guess, for most of the relationship anyways, but even more so in that last stretch. I used to tell him, I'll let you go as long as I know you're going to Jesus. And I had doubts. Even though he'd been in the hospital in 2018 and came out a different person, the abuse stopped. I still wasn't quite sure because Mark felt very comfortable to express how he felt about some of the things that he didn't get in life that he wanted. He still had a lot of disappointments. He still wanted to blame a sovereign God for a number of things. And sorry, this is hard to do in one take. My thoughts are going everywhere. I wasn't 100% sure until the day he died. And then he spent 16 hours throwing up blood. That's how he left. And he kept fighting. After a point it made sense, where I'm like, why are you not letting go? And I was trying everything from touching his arm, touching his leg, telling him everything that I knew he needed to hear, playing the songs that we used to love, and nothing was working to console him. He was kind of brushing it all off. I was literally out of options when I grabbed him by the face, got him out of whatever hazy world he was living in, and said, I'll let you go. I know I don't have a choice anymore. I'll let you go. And like immediately the moaning stopped, and peace came. And so I grabbed this poem off the wall that I'd written for him a year before called Tether Point 925. And it was all about me demanding that I get to escort him into eternity. And it's like he was silent for the 7 or so minutes that it takes to read it. And then he was gone as soon as I was done. The nurse came over and felt for his pulse, and she said, he's not breathing, but there's a very faint pulse. And so I prayed with him, and then he was gone. Like that. At exactly noon. Not 11:59, not 12:01, exactly noon. I'd poured myself a rye and Coke 3 hours before he left. 9 o'clock in the morning. We had stocked up, so I had about 200 ounces available to me. And I spent most of his last day going, how am I going to do this sober? Am I even going to remember? Am I going to get to the end of his death day and not remember? I was scared. I was scared to remember, and I was scared I was going to forget. And then about an hour after he died, somebody offered me a shot. And it felt instantly dishonorable. Not just because he died from drinking alcohol, but because he'd hung on for me. Because I knew the only reason he'd stay was because I said, I'll let you go. He was waiting for it. And I'd never felt more loved in my life. And I didn't want to trample on that love. I had 2 shots when they were removing his body and cheersing with friends and saying a last goodbye. 2 shots out of his last rye bottle. But I haven't had a drink since. I had been such a sloppy drunk for almost a decade, and his love freed me from it in an instant when he died. And any wondering about whether Mark is with the Lord or not was eradicated that day, because I was looking at it and all I was sensing was this overwhelming joy and this sense of love, not just that my husband had, but that God had for me. I was like, you're gonna use this. I know you're gonna use this, and it would not be right of a good God for me to get up to heaven and go, okay, look, you've used me for decades now because of the love that my husband had for me. Where is he? And for him to say he's not here, you misunderstood. There's no way. There's absolutely no way. And so Mark's love for me and God's love for us is how I know that my husband is with the Lord. And I'm overwhelmed often by that thought, less so than I used to be. It's amazing we can get numb to miracles, man. But I lost my train of thought, and I don't want to stop this because it's okay. I'm thinking about all the other things we used to do, like I self-represented in court for my divorce trial, and I represented Mark for a criminal trial, and I won. I did awesome things in the courtroom. Mark just did awesome things in life. He was extraordinary. He was such a special human being, and he hid so much of himself. I don't think everybody else appreciated that, and I'm okay with that being our own secret. Sometimes it frustrates me when I think people think maybe I'm absolutely bonkers for having loved him as much as I did. But I am still happily married to my dead husband. I have not so much as gone on a Tinder swipe left, swipe right since Mark passed. I don't engage in conversations with men, even in Messenger. A faithfulness and a fidelity that I never had before then is something that feels easy now. I'm happily tied to him since he passed. And wondering what the heck I'm supposed to do with my life. I got certified as an end of life doula, and then I became the director of communications for an end of life doula organization for about 9 months. But it wasn't fulfilling all of the different things that I was talking about. People come to me with abusive relationships and addictions. And so that's why I've made this channel, and that's why I'm here and hoping to connect with you. I went through a lot of stuff with Mark. I've gone through a lot of stuff since, and I think I've processed a lot of it well. And I think there's a certain wisdom that comes from life experience that you don't get from other places. And so I hope you stick with me. I get a little rambly sometimes, or my thoughts feel a little disjointed, like you can feel that there's a half dozen things that I wanted to stay in between things, but don't quite get to. And that's okay too. I hope it's okay for you. I know I look off to the right too many times, but sorry, the left. I hope you stay with me.